This is Killer Innovations, a show about ideas, creativity, and how you can innovate. Welcome to the Innovators Garage, where you learn to create your next game-changing killer innovation.
Welcome to this week's episode of Killer Innovations. I'm your host, Phil McKinney. Today we are broadcasting live from Silicon Valley at my offices in Sunnyvale, California. So you may think it sounds a little bit different. We are not in the studio. We are doing this show remote this week. One of the common questions that I get from listeners of the show is around things such as intellectual property, patents, should you file for patents, the issues of trademarks, should you get a trademark, how valuable is a trademark? And if you recall, it's probably 3 or 4 weeks ago, we had Tracy Hazard on. Tracy's a very well-known industrial designer, has designed with her and her husband. And one of the things that she advocates is trademarks with regards to even the value of design trademarks. So trademarks specifically around the design of a particular item. And there's always been this question on whether or not those are valuable, or design patents. Do they have value versus utility patents? So this week we've actually are bringing on a guest to talk more specifically around those issues, but more specifically around trademarks and really the challenges and how to become more efficient in the process of getting trademarks on the things that you're working on. So with that, let me introduce today's guest. We have Andrei Menkov. Andrei came onto our radar screen with regards to some of the books he's published, and specifically around his company called Trademark Factory that helps entrepreneurs go through the whole process of getting trademarks and do that as efficiently as possible, particularly helping those in the startup community. So Andrei, hey, welcome to the show. Appreciate you taking your time out to join us today.
I'm really excited to be here today.
So Andrei, give us a little bit of background on your story. I think, we will get to the Trademark Factory, but I think you've got kind of a little, I think you had an interesting story of how you got to where you are today. That is unique. And I think it all plays into that perspective of what it is you do and how you think. So why don't you take about 5 minutes and just introduce yourself to the audience?
Sure. Well, as it often happens, there was a chain of unexpected coincidences. The way I got into the intellectual property industry was because of my father, who was a famous composer in Russia. And you can probably hear it in my accent when I talk. Right? I'm originally from Russia, lived there for most of my life. And I was in my second year of law school there when my dad heard his music on the radio advertising Samsung without his permission. And he called the radio station and told him that they couldn't just steal his music. And they told him to sit down, shut up, and be happy that they're making him even more famous. Believe it or not, he didn't like it very much. So he came to me and asked me if I could, as a law student, help him take this matter to court. And even though I totally didn't see myself as a lawyer when I was going to law school, I didn't like what I was learning. I've always admired my dad, and I've always wanted to please him. So when he asked me if I could help him, what do you think I told him?
Well, of course, you said yes.
Of course. There were 3 problems with that. One is I had no clue what copyright law was. I didn't know anything about it. Second, I didn't know anything about what to do in a courtroom, because the first 2 years of law school, they spent teaching us some theoretical nonsense that I've never used ever since. And most importantly, there was no Google back then to help me figure all this out. There was no Google, there was no Quora. You had to figure all those things out yourself. So we took them to court. It took me several years to take them from the bottom court all the way up to one instance short of Supreme Court of Russia, where I won. And in the process, I became really, really, really passionate about it, and more and more knowledgeable. So after I spent several years just helping my dad with his various intellectual property debacles, I joined the biggest international law firm in the world, Baker McKenzie, their Moscow office, where I was helping with copyright, domain name, trademark issues, all of the multi-billion dollar companies, Facebook, Microsoft, Apple, DreamWorks, Google, J.K. Rowling. If you can think of a big name, I've probably done something for them then. And in '07, me and my wife, we realized that however well things were going, I was, hotshot lawyer with a big firm, recognized as top 5 intellectual property lawyer in the country. Something was missing, and that was freedom. So I wanted to move to a place where people respect intellectual property, where they respect entrepreneurship, where they respect freedom. And after a short research, I realized that the easiest place with English as a state language that I could get into would be Canada. Really, that was as much as I knew about the country back then. And so I immigrated to a country where I knew nobody, where nobody knew me, where I've never been before. I made the decision to go there. And one of the first things I learned was that I had to go back to law school for 3 more years. And that was a big surprise, honestly, after, my PhD in law in Russia, after 13 years of practice, 5 of them with this big law firm. Really? I have to go back to law school? Yes. So I went back to law school. After the law school, got my license, and then came the next surprise. Nobody wanted to hire me. And that was really painful. That was probably the most frustrating time of my life, because I've never had to look for work. The work always found me. And when that happened, I picked up the book by Robert Kiyosaki, Rich Dad, Poor Dad, and a completely new chapter of my life began, because I decided to start my own law firm. And very quickly, I realized that my success with that firm would have nothing to do with my brilliance, with my excellence as a lawyer, and really everything to do with my skills as a marketer and a sales guy, which at that time I had none. And I was just trying to figure out, how do I, with no money, with no resources, with no connections, build something that would make my firm successful in a really narrow niche. And I was spending more and more time trying to figure those things out. And eventually I came up with this idea of Trademark Factory that would be doing trademarks the way that nobody else does them, right? It's difficult, because on the legal side, everybody does the same thing. All trademark attorneys follow the same checklist. They all follow the same textbooks. On the legal side, it's the same thing. But how do you package it so that you stand out and you get people to raise their hand and give you their money?
So, hey, Andre, let's back up just a second here and give everybody kind of some people may be familiar with what a trademark is. We may have some listeners who aren't that familiar with what a trademark is. So a 1-minute description on just how do you define, or how does the system define trademarks in the form of intellectual property?
Yeah, I'm famous for explaining intellectual property so that a 9-year-old can understand. So that's exactly what I'm going to do. So a trademark is anything that allows your market to tell your product and services apart from identical or similar products and services of everyone else, right? It can be a word, can be a phrase, can be an image, can be a color, can be a sound, can be the shape, can be anything, as long as it fulfills that function of people being able to figure out how your burger is different from the burger that's offered by your competition. Right? So I always imagine putting your product and service in a box mentally and putting your competition's stuff in their box, and whatever you can place on that box that will make people see yours from your competition's is something that can be trademarked.
Oh, that's great. That's actually great. Well, I don't know what that says for me, right? As far as being able to explain a trademark to a 9-year-old. But no, I think that's a great point. And I think a lot of people particularly entrepreneurs, get shortchanged to trademarks. They tend to want to focus on patents versus the ability to use trademarks and protect that trademark as really the unique differentiation. And that becomes, really one of the key points. Do you see that? Do you see a lot of entrepreneurs maybe shortchange the trademark work?
Yeah, because they don't see really how trademarks work, and in the next section, I actually want to share a strategy that a lot of really smart companies use to use trademarks to build that uniqueness in the marketplace, even when there is none.
That's perfect. Yes, we're going to take a quick commercial break here. When we come back, Andre's going to share with us kind of his thoughts on the trademarks, how Trademark Factory actually helps entrepreneurs step out and get that protection and help really establish that trademark branding piece. So stay right there. We're going to be right back. If you want to get connected with the Innovation Show, text the word innovate to 33444 or go to killerinnovations.com/innovate. Stay right there. We're going to be right back. You're listening to Killer Innovations on the BizTalk Radio Network.
Stay tuned.
biztalkradio.com.
This is Killer Innovations, a show about ideas, creativity, and how you can innovate. Welcome to the Innovators Garage, where you learn to create your next game-changing killer innovation.
Welcome back to this week's episode of Killer Innovations. I'm your host, Phil McKinney. We are out and about. We are not in our normal studios for this week's show, so we are out and about. We're in Silicon Valley this week. I'm actually teaching the Innovation Bootcamp course starting tomorrow in Sunnyvale. It's a 5-day course that I've been teaching for quite some time. Started when I was a CTO at Hewlett Packard. It basically takes my book and really blows it out and gives everybody a pretty intense kind of experience. Most of the courses that I teach, though, are private courses. I do them for corporations or organizations, et cetera. I do a lot for nonprofits, and I donate my time for those activities. But we actually have a course that we're going to be teaching here in Sunnyvale in June for the boot camp. It's one of the few that are open to the public, so individuals can sign up to take that course. If you're interested in that, just drop me a note, phil@killerinnovations.com, and I can send you the link to the boot camp that's coming up in June. But let's get back to our topic for this week's show. This week's show, we're talking about trademarks. Our guest today is Andre Minkoff. Andre is the founder, CEO of Trademark Factory. We've just wrapped up in the previous segment talking about what is a trademark. And I want to pick it up and get more in depth on that around entrepreneurialisms and startups and how people sometimes don't quite get it right when they think about what they really need to do about trademark protection. So Andre, what's your kind of perspective on this? I mean, obviously you started something to try to help companies or help startups or help entrepreneurs with the trademark, but what's the problem with that? What was the problem you're trying to solve that allowed you to then go off and create Trademark Factory?
Well, what I looked at is why do people not do more trademarks? And basically there are a lot of misconceptions about trademarking out there, and I think there are two sources for them. One is lawyers who try to fearmonger their clients into buying stuff they don't need, and the second source are frustrated clients of those lawyers who now fearmonger everybody else against those lawyers who fearmonger their clients into buying stuff they don't need. So what I wanted to do is create a system that makes trademarking really easy to understand and really irresistible in terms of seeing the value. And a part of that process is my educational efforts, like the books, the videos, the cartoons that we publish. And part of it was just creating a way to package our services in a way that's understandable and fully predictable, right? So that's really what was the goal behind that. And that's how I came up with this idea that we're going to have a free trademark search so that you don't waste your money on trademarks that are not registrable.
Is that a common problem though for startups? I mean, I've run across where entrepreneurs automatically think that they're the first one that ever came up with an idea. right? They don't realize there may be somebody else out there who's in a similar space.
Yeah, it happens all the time, and you'd be surprised in terms of the conversations that we have with them. It only takes me to tell them, you know what, I don't think it's registrable, for them to start wanting it really badly. Compared to the brand owners come up with a great brand and it's perfectly trademarkable, well, you know what, I need to think about it. It's amazing how psychology works. But we've had clients who come with brands that are very much similar to something that's already there. And I just wanted to take you back a little bit to that idea that I wanted to share about how you use trademarks, not just to protect the brand, but also to create that uniqueness. And that's something that I've picked up from Ford commercials. They used to run those ads on TV that would all end with, only Ford has EcoBoost fuel economy, right? And interestingly, they never told you what EcoBoost fuel economy was. They never told you how it was better, how it was different. They didn't even tell you if eco stood for economy or ecology, right? So, but the human mind is made the way that if you tell somebody that you're the only one that does something, they automatically assume it's got to be good. So the strategy that I see used more and more, and in startup communities as well, is you come up with a feature, and the feature does not have to be unique, right? It just has to be important to the market. And then you name that feature. The name has to be unique. Then you trademark that name, and then you use it right and left. And basically, in all of your marketing, you start saying, we are the only company that does this, right? The most recent example is, most startuppers probably know this, is the SEO world, the backlinko, the skyscraper technique, right? So the guy came up with a way to get more leads to your website, and he gave it a name, he trademarked it. Now he says, I'm the only one who can give you that. It's wonderful. It's amazing.
So it's really about staking out territory in the minds of the consumer.
Yeah, and trademarks are the only area of intellectual property that you can renew forever, right? So Coca-Cola still renews its trademark that they filed in 1892, right? Which, by the way, was the year when they were only selling 9 drinks a day. I call it a lemonade stand with a dream. Compare that to patents that are only good for 20 years after the filing date, and it takes you about 4 or 5 years to get a patent. So if your effective duration of protection is like 15 years, and after that, it's fair game for anyone to use the same invention. So
in the past, I've had some experience in the trademark game. But, you always do the search, then it comes back, and it becomes input as far as your changes to the process. But there was always the fee associated with it. How did you guys do it a little differently, though?
Yeah, so I came up with this idea that trademarks are binary. You either get one or you don't. And clients don't really care how much time we spend getting them their trademark. So we came up with an all-inclusive flat fee that covers everything from start to finish, that doesn't change even if we get objections from the trademarks office and we have to spend 50 hours of back and forth with the trademark examiner. The client's price stays the same, and we back it up with 100% money-back guarantee. So if we tell you your brand is registrable, we take your money, and we can't deliver, I think it's immoral for me to keep your money. To me, it's common sense, but it's not common practice. Nobody else in the world is doing this. So that's what Trademark Factory is all about.
Yeah, I mean, you're right. It's always, the typical process is as soon as you pick up the phone or send an email, the clock starts ticking.
Every time I sneeze on your file.
Hey, we're going to take another quick commercial break. When we come back, I want to pick up a little bit more specifically on the Trademark Factory, but also talk a little bit about your decision to kind of leave your law practice and make this kind of entrepreneurial jump. It's one that a lot of entrepreneurs struggle with. I did 12 startups before I got my 13th startup that went to IPO. And so, it's that fear of stepping out and trying something and doing something that was not kind of the original path that you saw yourself. So when we come back, we're going to pick up this conversation with Andre, talk a little bit more about the Trademark Factory, but then really get into his whole discussion on his entrepreneurial experiences. So stay right there. We're going to be right back. You're listening to Killer Innovations on the BizTalk Radio Network.
biztalkradio.com.
This is Killer Innovations, a show about ideas, creativity, and how you can innovate. Welcome to the Innovators Garage, where you learn to create your next game-changing killer innovation.
Welcome back to Killer Innovations. I'm your host, Phil McKinney. We are a show about creativity, design, and innovation. This week, we're talking about the whole concept around trademarks. A lot of those of us in the innovation game, we tend to get pretty focused on patents and the value of patent protection and the whole role of securing patents early in the process. And is that the right thing? And should you spend, $30,000, which is about what the cost is in US dollars to go through the whole process to get a patent in place? But we tend to ignore kind of that one area that is critically, in some cases, not even more important, which is around your trademark. That differentiation that owns that place in your consumers' minds as to why you're different from anybody else and everybody else in your space. So today's guest is Andrei Menkoff. Andrei is the founder and CEO for Trademark Factory. We've been talking with him in the show so far. We're going to pick up where we left off. And so, Andrei, we were talking a little bit about specifically the value component, and you shared in the last segment specifically around the fact that trademarks, basically, you can renew them forever. You gave Coca-Cola as the example.
Yeah.
But again, when I talk to entrepreneurs, it's always about patents. They never talk about trademarks. Why is it just because lack of familiarity, lack of knowledge, or is it really of less value? If I have $1 to spend, should I put it in trademarks? Should I put it in patents? How do you advise your clients?
Well, my usual advice is this: if you can't protect it without getting a patent, don't get a patent, right? Because as you said, patents are extremely expensive. They're extremely difficult to get. The level of novelty required to get one is very high. With trademarks, it's a lot less expensive, a lot easier to get, and it lasts forever. And so a couple of months ago, I did a research to see when all the hottest startups filed their first trademark application. That was very educational, right? Because they all say, ideas are nothing, execution is everything. I get it. But they all trademarked. But the interesting thing was when. So Uber, 2 months before they launched. Firefox, 2 months before they launched. Stripe, 8 months before launch. Google, same month. Facebook, same month. Periscope, same. They all did it before they were on anybody's map. And my answer to how come is it's a self-worth issue. They knew that they could become the next big thing, and they did what next big things do. They protect the value in that brand. And when I, meet with somebody and they're like, I don't know if it's worth the, a couple $1,000s that it's going to cost me to protect my brand. I'm like, why are you building, why are you spending the time building this if you don't know if it has any value, right? Is this a hobby, or are you serious about the brand? So, and a lot of them say, well, you know what, I just don't know how it's going to go. Like, yeah, Coca-Cola didn't know either, but they didn't wait till, they sold their first 100,000 bottles to protect the brand.
Exactly. So walk us through then how Trademark Factory works. You started this in the last segment where you do the search.
So you go. Yeah, so you go to freetmsearch.com. It's a page where you can't miss the form where you request a free trademark search, right? And what you get is real human beings looking at your trademark application. It's not an automated search. We have trademark professionals who know what they're doing, who know how to interpret the results. And so they're going to do the search, and they're going to prepare a report that we're going to walk you through over the phone and explain what it actually means, right? Costs you nothing. Assuming that there's something trademarkable, we will offer you to use our do-it-for-you services. And so the package that most of the clients choose is the all-inclusive, which is what I explained. And that one will come with a money back guarantee based on what we find during the search. So if we find that your trademark is not trademarkable, we're not suicidal. We're not going to give you 100% money back on that, but we're going to give you all the information that you need to make all those business decisions, right? So you fill out the form, and we're just going to walk you by the hand to make sure that everything gets done properly. And so it's not like we file what you tell us to file. We're actually going to have a conversation with you to make sure that all the lists, all the products and services that the trademark is supposed to cover are properly listed, right? So that makes sure of two things. One, you know what you're doing, and B, you get the result that you want.
And so how long, so if I go and I do the free trademark search,
yeah,
your people go off, do it, come back, and they say, yeah, you got something that we think you could get a decent trademark on. Then they guide you through the process, you file, you get the response back from the trademark offices. What's the average time from the time someone starts the process until the trademark gets awarded?
Yeah, so in the US, it's about 14 months. In Canada, it's about 18 months. It's not a quick process. Most of the process is spent waiting for the government to look at your trademark application or to look at the correspondence that you send them. But there are many, many different things, maybe many moving parts in terms of trademarking. So I do not recommend that people, it's legally possible to file your own trademark applications. I strongly do not recommend doing that because unlike filing for copyrights, which is very simple, and it's something which we actually recommend for people to do themselves, trademarking is way more difficult. And you don't want to end up with an application that will be abandoned, or even if you're successful, you don't want to end up with a registered trademark for stuff that's not right.
Yeah, exactly. Because again, you've wasted the time, and then when you do need to assert it against somebody, if it's not, I've learned this lesson. If it's not done right,
yeah,
all of a sudden you find yourself in trouble. It's too late to go back and try to fix it.
Yeah, look, there's something I always say to pretty much, when I do public events, I say there's no one in this room that does something that somebody else couldn't do. Most of you can do trademarks. If you read the same books I've read, if you go through, it's not rocket science. But the question is that the best use of your time, right? Trademarks is the only thing we do, right? We filed thousands of trademarks, so we know how to do this, right? So that we're not in the, gatekeepers to some sacred knowledge business. We're in the saving your time business.
Right. Now, in this case, you were a lawyer. Because of some anomaly in Canadian law, you had to give up your law license in order to focus your efforts on doing Trademark Factory. So you kind of had your career path kind of figured out, and then all of a sudden you stop that and really focusing down on Trademark Factory.
Yeah.
What was it that caused you to kind of say, hey, I want to do this, not this? Because that's where a lot of entrepreneurs, and people get stuck making that entrepreneurial leap, is because of, I used to do this, I'm going to go do this, but that's a big, scary leap.
So last year I celebrated the 20th anniversary of me being a lawyer, and realized that with Trademark Factory, I came up with something that really works well and that people want. And we could, as a Canadian firm, legally file trademarks for anybody in Canada and for Canadians in the US, but we couldn't file US trademarks for Americans through our system. And I'm like, it doesn't make any sense. So my question was, how do we get around this? And I looked at all the regulations to realize that the way to get around this would be to give up the license. It was probably one of the biggest steps out of my comfort zone to give it up. But as we did it, we got amazing feedback from all of our new clients. We had 2 best quarters in a row. So apparently what we're doing works.
Yeah, the best reinforcement is the fact that all of a sudden you got clients coming and you're making more money with your best 2 quarters, right? That's always the positive reinforcement.
Yeah.
How big is Trademark Factory? How many people do you have on your team?
We have 7 people right now.
Oh, wow. Okay, that's great. That's great. Hey, we're going to get ready to go to a commercial break. But Andre, I know you weren't scheduled to stay for the 4th segment. Can you hang on for the next segment?
I'd love to.
Perfect. Because I want to get into this kind of entrepreneurial leap thing from your perspective going into the Trademark Factory. Talk about that a little bit more. So when we come back, we're going to pick up. I'm going to blow out what I thought I was going to do in the fourth segment, keep Andre here on the show, and we're going to continue the conversation around Trademark Factory, the starting up of that business, and where that's going. Also, we'll talk a little bit more about some of Andre's books that he's published that you may all be interested in reading. So stay right there. Don't go anywhere. We're going to be back. If you want to get connected to Killer Innovations, text the word innovate to 33444. If you're outside the United States, visit killerinnovations.com/innovate. Get connected, become part of the community here at Killer Innovations, and that would be great. Look forward to that. So stay right there. We're going to be right back. You're listening to Killer Innovations on the BizTalk Radio Network.
biztalkradio.com.
This is Killer Innovations, a show about ideas, creativity, and how you can innovate. Welcome to the Innovators Garage, where you learn to create your next game-changing killer innovation.
Welcome back to this episode of the Killer Innovations podcast and radio show. We're coming up into the fourth segment. We've been talking today about trademarks and really this kind of overlooked and in many cases underutilized protection that you can put around the execution of your idea, really the personification of what it is you're working on that differentiates what you're doing against everybody else in the exact same space. And we've had the benefit of having Andre Minkoff with us. Andre is the founder and CEO of Trademark Factory, a firm that he started after having spent 20 years as an attorney and giving all that up to start Trademark Factory and run that as his primary business, helping individuals and companies and startups and et cetera really go from just the concept of a trademark, but actually through that whole process and getting it all done. So Andre, thanks for sticking around for the fourth segment. Appreciate your flexibility in the schedule. Let's pick up where we left off in the last segment. We were talking about your leap from being an attorney in Canada, having come from Russia, having to go back to school for 3 years, get your license in Canada, and then ultimately get to the point where you chucked the license in order to focus on Innovation Factory, or not Innovation Factory, but the Trademark Factory. That had to be like one of the scariest things, right, as far as just stepping away. But it sounds like now, though, you are 100% on Trademark Factory. That's your primary business, right?
Yeah, that's the only thing we do, and it makes things a lot easier, and it makes me think more like an entrepreneur. So the way I describe it, it was a transition from a lawyer with entrepreneurial seizure, like Michael Gerber calls it, to being an entrepreneur who knows more about intellectual property than most people on this planet. But I find more and more fun in just coming up with ways to automate, ways to build stuff, the ways to market. Like this is our latest piece of work, right? Squirrel.
Yeah. Andre's holding up onto the screen. If you're watching on Facebook Live or Zoom, you can see this. But he's finding ways in order to really be kind of a little bit of shock to the people about what it is he does.
Yeah, so this kind of stuff cracks me up a lot more than sitting there and drafting a contract for our client. So when I saw that, I was enjoying the building a lot more than the actual doing, and that I could always hire somebody to do the doing, and that I could always supervise it. And I realized, Andre, maybe you should focus on things that there's more value that you can bring in. And I still occasionally do oversee what's happening. Obviously, if there's a challenge that we need to overcome, we do it together. But I see my role right now is to make this work as a trademark factory, right? I don't know how many cars Henry Ford assembled himself? Right?
Exactly.
Not many.
Exactly. So in the case of Trademark Factory, how many countries do you guys operate in now?
So currently we do trademarks in Canada, US, and European Union. We have clients from all over the world. And so this May, I am going to the International Trademark Association meeting. If you can imagine a room with 10,000 lawyers in it, that's what International Trademark Association meeting is like. I think last year they had 8,700 people, right? And my goal there is to build alliances with firms in other jurisdictions, because I don't know how to file a trademark in China, or don't know how to file a trademark in India, and I don't want to know that. But what I do want to know is who we can partner up with there, so we can repackage their services in the way that our clients want them.
Now, hold it, Doug, but won't those attorneys think of you as a threat to kind of the old traditional model of stopwatch, I'm counting every minute of all I'm spending on work for clients?
No, because they are charging us by the minute. We just know how to interpret their numbers, because we are in a unique position in the sense that I know how to speak legal speak, and I know how to speak client speak, right? I understand normal language as well. So what we do is we find somebody on the ground who they don't offer 100% money back guarantee. They don't offer all-inclusive flat fees. But what we look at is the likelihood of getting things through and the risks of us having to spend a lot more on this than we're going to charge the client.
Okay.
And based on that, we repackage what they do. So everybody's happy. They get paid whatever they want to get paid.
So you don't ask them to change their approach to their model. You adapt your model to them.
Yeah.
So you're not asking them really to throw everything that they've been doing for the last 100 years as the approach. And you basically arbitrage between finding all these attorneys but packaging in such a way that the customers see it as it's kind of it's fixed. I know what the cost is going to be. I'm not going to be surprised.
Yep.
And I'm going to get the end result at the end.
Yeah.
That's great. That is. So you've actually got a couple of books out now, right?
I got 5. I had 3 of them in English. So the biggest one that I came up with was my bestseller, The Ultimate Insider's Guide to Intellectual Property. And from there, last year, I decided to do a couple of spin-offs, just much shorter book that's based on a specific industry. So I have one for restaurants and I have one for coaches.
That's great. And actually, we're going to have links of that up on the show notes over at Killer Innovations. So Andre, if someone wants to follow you, get connected with you, contact you, what's the best way for them to find you?
Trademarkfactory.com or LinkedIn.
Okay.
Very easy to find. There are not many Andre Minkoffs out there who do trademarks.
And again, we'll have links for that up on Killer Innovations. So check out the show notes. We'll have links to Andre and to his books. I encourage you to go check those out, buy those over from Amazon. And particularly, there's one for mentors, coaches, trainers, consultants on intellectual property that I think is actually really, really good. So you want to go check that out. So as we wrap up this week, again, check out the show notes over at Killer Innovations. Connect with us via by texting the word innovate to 33444. If you're outside the United States, visit killerinnovations.com/innovate. And the show comes out on podcast on Tuesdays. We're live here each and every Sunday. The show is also rebroadcast Saturday morning, so check it out on Saturday morning. The one favor I would ask is hop on over to iTunes and give us a rating. We really do appreciate that. That helps us out a lot. We'll wrap up this week. You've been listening to Killer Innovations on the BizTalk Radio Network, and we will be back next week, next Sunday, the same time on your local station or here live streamed. So thanks a lot for listening, and we'll talk to you next week.
Protect your brand.
BizTalkRadio.com